G'day guys, Luke here. Welcome back to another video. In today's video guys, I'm giving you guys some tips for those who are looking at buying reptiles from Reptile Expos. Before we go any further into the video, now for those who live in Australia, especially along the east coast, there are some exciting Reptile Expos coming up. On the 22nd of March out in Penrith, we do have the Penrith Reptile Expo. This one is one of the bigger ones, so if you wish to go to a Reptile Expo, especially Sydney, this is the main one to go to. Now, I will be attending this expo, however, someone much bigger than I am is attending, and his name is Dave Croftman. Very exciting news. Some of the information I have found online is there'll be about 25 to 30 different breeders attending this expo, so there won't be a shortage on reptiles. Now, there will be 2 halls set up, one for your products and one for the reptiles, so make sure you go through both halls, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I will mention too, each expo is run by different groups of host societies or groups of people. So just keep in mind, each expo will be different from one another. However, I do find the Penrith Expo being one of the best ones to go to. For those who live in Victoria, of course, the Victorian Reptile Expo is going ahead on the 28th of March. Now, unfortunately, I won't be attending this expo as it is a fair bit away from me. However, one year I would love to go and attend this expo because it looks like one of the best ones to go to. Back in New South Wales, where we do have a couple more expos coming up. In April, we've got the Hunter Valley Reptile Expo, technically held in Newcastle. Then in May, we do have the Illawarra Expo as well. Those are kind of the last of the expos I have heard. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anything on the Queensland one out in Brisbane. But I do believe there'll be another Penrith Reptile Expo sometime in spring as well. However, details are yet to come out on that one as well. Into the tips we go. So the first tip that I have for everybody is if you live in Australia, you must have a reptile license to own a reptile. Doesn't matter what state and territory that you live in, you must have one. However, just a side note, each state and territory do have their own separate laws and regulations on these licenses. So depending where you live, just double check with local wildlife officers to make sure you can obtain the right license and how to go about it. Now, I do believe as well, most countries in the world do have a reptile license as well. So if you live overseas, like I said with all the Australians, just double check with a wildlife office just to see what you need to do to get a reptile license. There's a question I get asked from time to time, and that is, where can I buy a leopard gecko, a corn snake, a ball python, a chameleon, other random reptiles? Unfortunately, here in Australia, we are only allowed to keep native reptiles. If you are caught with an exotic reptile, you will get jailed and be fined, as it is highly illegal to own exotic reptiles here in Australia. For those who wish to attend a reptile expo, doesn't matter if it's one from overseas or here in Australia, when you walk through the doors, have a look around first. Now, if you notice a species that you can get quite easily, walk around, compare prices. However, if it's a species that you're after is quite hard to get, you may have to jump on the first one that you see so you don't miss out. So it does kind of depend on what you're after. So normally I tell people, walk around, compare prices, then go from there. Once you've walked around and you have decided on a reptile you wish to purchase, of course you want to make sure the animal is healthy. Now, keep in mind as well, these reptiles have been through some stress. They've gone from their main area into a reptile expo, not knowing what's going on. They are in an unfamiliar environment, so they don't know exactly what's happening. So when you do pick a reptile, make sure it's nice and healthy. Make sure it's bright and alert, meaning it's looking around, kind of expecting the environment is it in. Now, of course, with any reptile that tongue flicks, like blue tongues, goannas and snakes, you want to make sure they are tongue flicking freely, so there's no blockages. You want to check things for like respiratory infections, excess saliva and mucus, mites, ticks, skin worms, any other illnesses that may be shown. Now, most reptile breeders are pretty honest. They like to sell happy, healthy animals. However, in the past, I have seen some interesting breeders that didn't really care about the animals' health. There was one year where I noticed one breeder was selling reptiles that had mites, ticks. They had a snake that was skin worms. So my bet was they were poached from the wild, these animals. So you might have a couple reptile breeders there that might be trying to sell you poached animals. So make sure you inspect the animal completely. Ask the breeder to allow you to inspect it. That way you can have a proper look and decide if you wish to still take this animal home. When buying a baby reptile, depending on the group you wish to own, some of them are easier to sex than others, and it could be different through species to species as well. So I find majority of your dragon species can be somewhat easier to sex compared to, let's say, for a baby snake, for example. Now, some breeders may try popping baby snakes to tell you what gender they are. I'm personally not a big fan of this method because you can run the risk of this animal being injured. So when you're buying a baby reptile, just take it for the grain of salt that the gender that they tell you could be correct or may not be incorrect. So it's a bit of a lucky dip at some stages. One other thing I will mention regarding to babies, once you do find a batch that you like, choose the biggest, fattest one. That way you know it's more established. That way when you take it home, you got more of a chance of it surviving. Don't choose a runt because you just don't know if there's anything wrong with it. And being a runt, you may not know how to care for it properly. Don't get me wrong, I do have a soft spot for these runts. However, I do have the experience of raising them. So if you're new to reptiles, always go for the biggest, fattest one. When buying an older reptile does have its own set of risks. The first one being is you don't know the true age of the animal. Some breeders might tell you the actual age of the animal to let you know how old it is and how much time you got left with it. Some breeders might just come up with a random age to make the sale. So for example, you could buy a bearded dragon that's supposedly a 4-year-old. You'll be thinking, oh yeah, I got it for 4 or 5 years at best. Go home and 6 months later it dies. It makes you wonder what you did wrong, but in reality the animal was 9-10 years old already and didn't have much time left. So when you're buying an older reptile, just be mindful of the age of the animal too. Another big gamble when it comes to buying older reptiles, and that is the gender. Now for example, if I'm going to the Reptile Expo to try to find a female snake to pair with from a male, there's a few things I could be mindful of. One being I could find a female for sale, but she could be very old and she may not even make it to the breeding season, or she might not be interested in mating at all. Or I can go in thinking I'm buying a female, however the breeder's selling me a male that they had spare. So some people might mislabel their animals on purpose to make the sale. There was a prime example a few years ago at one of these expos where there was a few people interested in a certain snake and the guy labelled it as a female, and someone smart enough asked them to get it probed and they didn't have a probing kit on hand, but the table next to them did. So they probed the snake and it came back as a male. As soon as the word male spread through the community, no one was interested in this snake, and I'm pretty sure the breeder went home with this snake. So if you are buying an older reptile to breed, obviously be mindful of the age, but however, if you want to know the sex, get someone there who's a professional to sex it for you. That way you can know for sure if you're buying a legitimate male or female, or it may be a scam. When you're buying an animal, it is the best time to ask questions because the breeder is there to help you how to care for it. So obviously ask questions regarding to expectations of care and lifespan. Obviously if you're buying from a breeder, you expect them to know how to look after them because they know how to breed them, how to raise the young. They know the tips and tricks of that species. If they don't know how to answer your questions, then maybe they are a bit sus. So if they're giving you good information, buy off them. If they're not giving you any information, then you might have to go to someone else. It is quite unfortunate, this is something I have to bring up, but there are a lot of brain dead idiots out there, and that is when you have purchased a reptile, or any pet for that matter, doesn't matter what it is, do not leave them in the bloody car. Doesn't matter how long you're going to be, as long as you do it, the chances of them dying quite high. So please, please, please do not leave any animal in the car. You want to let your children in there, don't do it with any animal. So I had to get off my chest. Now, unfortunately, this happened at a recent expo. Now, I don't want to go into too much details, otherwise I will lose my mind. But please, guys, do not leave your animals in the car, or children for that fact. If you've done that, you do not deserve to have pets, nor children. Now, another thing too is, on the way home, do not open the bag nor containers in the car. The last thing is you want that animal to do is go into the footwell in the driver's seat. The driver panics and you have an accident, or get somewhere where you can't get it back. Nothing you'll be aware of too is the sun. Make sure you have it in a shady spot in the car with the air conditioning on so you don't cook it, because it's quite easily done. So I usually like to put it in the footwell in the passenger seat. That way it's getting the aircon, but it's also avoiding the sun on the way home. So please, ladies and gentlemen, keep your animals safe for the travel home. My last bit of advice for those who want to get stuff at the expo, such as enclosures and products, make sure you have a vehicle where you can at least carry it or get these items home. You don't want to be one of those people who rely on an Uber, and the Uber wouldn't allow you to take that home because they don't want the car to get damaged. I have heard of someone going home via a bus and a train with a massive enclosure. Don't know how they did it, but apparently they done it. So kudos to them. But yeah, just make sure when you're getting something large, you have enough space to fit it in your car so you can get home safely. That will be it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully it was very educational for those who wish to go to a Reptile Expo, and that way you guys know what to do when you go to one. But anyway, we'll wrap it up here. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.